Shavua Tov, a good Woch, and welcome to our program. We are in the beginning of the first Adar this year. Baruch Hashem, this year every year we have one Purim. This year we have two Purims. The big Purim, which is in Adar Sheni, and also in Adar Rishon we have Purim Koton, and we are approaching Purim Koton. And you saw from the Rebbe a special fervor. The Rebbe hat sich gekocht with a special fervor concerning the first Adar and the first Purim. And he brought what the Ramos says in Shulchan Aruch, the pasuk in Mishlei, "V'teiv leiv mishte tomid," that the one who has a goodness of heart is always happy. We will return to that in a moment, and to the special explanation of the Rebbe as to how we have to be happy with the first Adar and the first Purim. But first, our customary story. The year was Tovshin Nun Beis, and as we all know, Tovshin Nun Beis was a very, very sensitive year. It was in the beginning of Adar Rishon. I remember, like today, sitting in the office, Rabbi Groner called, because I wrote the Rebbe Aduch, which means a report of Mata Mashiach, of the activities of Mata Mashiach. And the Rebbe answered, Niskabel Chu is Chen. And then the Rebbe added 4 words. Shiro vezimro shishim yem. Shiro means to sing, and that generally is a reference to sing by mouth. Zimro is to sing through a musical instrument. Shishim Yem, 60 days. I must tell you, when we got this answer, didn't understand exactly why. And the Rebbe is talking about 60 days singing and dancing and with music for 60 days. But that's what we did. We went to the Gaboim and we got permission in Shul. And for 60 days, we sang and we danced every night. I must tell you, there was a wonderful individual. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. However, we could seal it up. Kutirap, as we called him lovingly, loved this miftzah. Kutirap was a person of great simcha, of great compassion, of great avas yisrael. And he made sure that every night there is music, and every night there is mashke, and every night there is farbaisen, shishim yem. But we didn't understand why and what does it mean. And although the Rebbe does not have to explain to us why he's telling us to do something, nevertheless on Shabbos, the Rebbe did explain to us what is the depth of what he said. Shiro vezimro shishim yem. It's a bit painful. The Rebbe explained that there is a halachic concept of botel b'shishim, something that is annulled by 60, which means, without going into detail, let's say it's a piece of meat that fell into a pot of milk, of hot milk. So the halacha is, if there is 60 times as much milk as the piece of meat, then the piece of meat is bottled. You can just take it out and throw it out, the meat, and then you can drink the milk. If it's less, the milk is treif, and the pot is treif, and a lot of shilas. But if it's 60, then it's bottled, it's annulled in 60. So the Rebbe said the same concept applies here. Botel b'shishim, that all the things of Adar that are negative should be botel, should be annulled, b'shishim, in the 60 days of both Adars, of singing and dancing, and saying l'chaim, and so on, shiro v'zimro. That's what the Rebbe said that we're bringing the Shabbos after. Now, we still didn't understand what the Rebbe was saying. Later on, unfortunately, after Chov Zayin Adar Rishon, and what happened on the day of Chov Zayin Adar Rishon, we understood, or we could have understood, what the Rebbe meant. The Rebbe wanted to annul, to be mevatel, Chov Zayin Oder Rishon, what happened on that day, the Rebbe wanted to be mevatel that with the Shira of Zimro. That's why the Rebbe said Shira of Zimro Shishim Yim, to be mevatel the negative parts of Oder. The Rebbe wanted to be mevatel what happened on Chov Zayin Oder Rishon. As simple as that. The Rebbe saw the future very, very clearly. And he answered us, Shiro v'zimro shishim yem. Shiro means singing by mouth. V'zimro is with a musical instrument, for 60 days. And the Rebbe wanted that Chov Zayin Oder Rishon should be botel b'shishim in the 60 days of Oder. That, then we understood, at least a little bit, what the Rebbe meant. And as mentioned, this was at the beginning of Oder Rishon of Tovshin Nun Beis. Rabbi say, we should talk about happy things, and we should see the Rebbe again. Take it from Miyad Mamish. Concerning Purim Cotton, and I remember if you can say that, the koch, the fervor with which the Rebbe said this sikha, with which he kept repeating and repeating, V'tev leiv mishte tomid. It starts this way. And then in the Siyum of Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, the Siyum of the first part of Shulchan Aruch of Orach Chaim, how does it conclude? With the halacha of Yudalad v'Tesvov Oder Rishon. With the halacha of Oder Rishon. That's the conclusion of the first part of Shulchan Aruch of Orach Chaim. And the Rebbe explains, what is the reason for that? Because the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim seinen ausgestellt, are organized in halachas von Zmanei Umedi Hashono, concerning the halachas of the times of the year. Ze heben sich on mit Rish Chedesh. They start with Rish Chedesh, HaChedesh HaZelochem, und dann noch Nissen, Hilchas Pesach, kommen die Dienen von Pesach, and therefore, because if you start with Pesach, then the end of that year is Purim. So the dinim of Purim come at the end. Now, how come the dinim of the first order come after the dinim of the second order, after the dinim of Pesach, of Purim? Because Purim is in the second order. So arguably, but this is the first order. So the halachas of the first order should come before the halachas of the second order. So the answer to that is because the real halachas of order are of Purim. Purim are all the obligations of Purim. So therefore, because of that, after Shulchan Aruch, it speaks in detail about the halachas of Purim, of the big Purim. So therefore, after that, it also adds that the halachas of the Purim Cotton, of the small Purim of Yudaled and Tesvov, Oder Rishon. But the Rebbe says that since this is part of Torah, there has to be a specific reason why the halachas of Tesvov of Yudaled and Tesvov of Oder Rishon are at the end. And the Rebbe brings from Sforim, it's brought in Shari Tshuva, it's in the footnotes, that the Chasime von Ramo is me'ena psicha. That the Ramo, the one who writes at the end, V'tev leiv mishte tomid, is the Ramo. Because on the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramo adds Hagoy, like always, and he writes, Yesh emerim, shechayev lahalbeis b'mishte v'simcha b'yudalot shebe'Oder Rishon. There are some who say that he has an obligation to add b'mishte v'simcha. B'mishte means in food, and simcha means happiness, on Yudalad of the first order. Then he writes, Ve'ein nehagin kein, but it's not the minhag. Mikol mokem, nevertheless, Yarbe ktsas beseudo, kedei lotzeis yedei machmirim. He should add a little bit in the Suda. He should make the Suda of Yud Dalet Oder Rishin. He should make a little bit more in order that he should fulfill also the opinion of the Machmirim, of those who are more stringent and those who want that you should make another feast. And then he adds, V'tev leiv mishtatomid. Now, tev leiv mishtatomid, Rabbi say, is a posuk in Mishlei. And arguably, you have to understand how it gets here. Because tev leiv mishtatomid does not refer to Odorishin. It means all the time. So it doesn't have a specific limit in any case. So the Ramos says that you should do a little bit more because it says Tev leiv mishtatomid. Tev leiv mishtatomid could mean that you should make a feast every single day. Not only every single day, arguably tomid means steady, every part of every single day. But the Rebbe says that it says in his following, why did the Ramo pick this posuk? And with that he concludes the first part of Elachayim, is because the Ramo wants to draw a parallel from the beginning of Elachayim till the end of Elachayim, of the Shulchan Aruch. In the beginning of Elachayim, the Ramo starts with the words, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi somid. I visualize Almighty God in front of me, somid, all the time. And therefore, since he started with the word somid, he also wants to end with somid with V'tev leiv mishtatomid. That's what it says in Sforim. That's what the Rebbe brings. And what is the explanation? The explanation is that Elachayim means the path of life. Shulchan Aruch tells a Jew how he should conduct himself every single moment of his life. For 70, 80, 120 years, this is how the Jew should conduct himself. So the Elachayim starts, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi somid. The first thing you have to know, do you visualize that God is in front of you all the time? That's the first thing. And then he also adds, V'tev leiv mishtatomid. And there are Mefoshim who say that the 2 times tomid are parallel to the two tmidim that we would be makriv in the Beis HaMikdash every day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So therefore, since there were 2 tmidim, korbanos tomid in the Beis HaMikdash every day, this is parallel to that. Not only that, because the Ramo also explains, and the Rebbe brings the details, when a person will take to his heart, that the great King, Almighty God Himself, that the whole world is filled with His honor, familiar to what it says in Tanya, similar. The Almighty God is standing next to him and he sees all his ma'asov. Immediately, he will be overcome with a sense of fear, in a sense of subservience to Almighty God, but fear of Almighty God, and he would always be embarrassed in front of God to do the right thing and chas v'sholem, not to go outside of the line. And the siyum of a tev leiv mishtatomid, that's the inyan of simcha. That he should also do this with simcha. That Baruch Hashem, he was zeicha that he understands that, and that he conducts himself in a way that Almighty God is going to be happy with him. This is one of the explanations. The Rebbe asks that Lepeil Lepel, there is still some explanation needed why the Ramah finishes the Sefer with Tev Leiv Mishta Tomid, as we said before. That's a general posuk for everything, not necessarily for the first order. So the Rebbe explains, and I must tell you that I remember when the Rebbe said it with the Koch, and he repeated, V'tev leiv mishta tomid, V'tev leiv mishta tomid. The Rebbe tzach gekocht, the fervor with which the Rebbe said that, to be besimcha. And it's not for us to say, but we saw that this is what the Rebbe himself did. The Rebbe liked simcha. He didn't like anything that's morbid. All the nigunim of the Rebbe were happy nigunim. He didn't like sad nigunim. He didn't like morbid nigunim. He liked happy nigunim. He liked happiness. You saw from the Rebbe with his hand constantly, always, in every matzav. In every matzav, the Rebbe was looking for the good, for the positive. So the Rebbe says that you see in simcha that there are different levels in simcha. First of all, it says, Ivdos Hashem b'simcha, that's general. But then you see that there are some parts that sometimes that simcha is special. Or on Purim, simcha is special. On Me'adim l'simcha, on Yomim Tevim, simcha is special, and so on. So there's an obligation of simcha. When it comes to Yud Alad Oder Rishon, there is no obligation of simcha. Nevertheless, the only reason, and the Ramah brings this pasuk, is because Tev Leiv Mishta Tomid, because we always have to be besimcha. And the Rebbe even brings out in the Nekuda that when simcha is not the obligation of the day, it is even deeper when it is the obligation. When it is the obligation, so you do this besimcha. If it's not the obligation of the day, then it's beyond the obligation. Then it's stronger and deeper. It's something that's in the essence of the Jew, to do everything besimcha. So therefore, when you don't find an obligation for simcha, that's because it's even deeper than an obligation. An obligation is you have to do. Even in Purim, you have to be besimcha. It doesn't say you have to be besimcha whole Purim. There are many things you have to do on Purim. You have to read the Megillah. You have to do things. You have to send Mishlach Monos. You can't sing and dance an entire Purim. Nevertheless, on the first Purim Koton, V'tev leiv mishta tomid, on entire Purim. And the Rebbe brings that the Taz says, and he brings a story. He says there was a Jew, the Yechiel of Paris. The Yechiel of Paris was one of the Balei HaTesvos. And what did he do? He would invite people, he would make a big feast on the first order, on Purim Koton, and he would invite a lot of people for that big feast. And therefore, he says, we can understand why the Ramah is saying, V'tev leiv mishta tomid. Now, the Rebbe again hat sich gekocht in them with great fervor that we should do the V'tev leiv mishta tomid. And although he says there are different levels of simcha, but you see that when the simcha is not the obligation of the day, it is even deeper. Simchas Beis HaSheva doesn't say in Chumash. Nevertheless, the biggest simcha was Simchas Beis HaSheva, more than V'samachta b'chagecha of the simcha of Sukkot that does say in Chumash. In other words, it's not everything that says. It's sometimes what it doesn't say. If it doesn't say, that means that it's so deep and so engraved in our psyche, in our soul, that it doesn't have to say. It's there all the time. And then the Rebbe brings, I must tell you, this is mind-boggling. Now you're going to argue that the Magen Avraham says that this Tev Leiv Mishta Tomid will bring about the simcha of the rebuilding of Beis Elokeinu, Oz Yemolis Chekpinu. You hear? That this V'tev Leiv Mishta Tomid, where the obligation is not expressed. It's only there because of Tev Leiv Mishta Tomid. That is going to bring about the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, and then we will be able to fill our mouth with joy and happiness. See, in other words, the simcha of the first order is a beginning of the simcha for Yibon Beis Hamikdash, of the binyan of the Beis Hamikdash. So when the Rebbe looks at the first order, of the first simcha, and it's evident in the way the Rebbe said the simcha, he sees this is the key. You want to know what the key is to rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash? Be happy on the first order. And so many times the Rebbe said, "Give a simcha seitzeyu." With simcha you will break through everything. But as a smart man once said, simcha is not something that you can copy. It's not something that you can force yourself. You can force yourself to learn. If you don't want to learn, you can force yourself to learn. You don't want to daven, you can force yourself to daven. You don't want to give tzedakah, you can force yourself to give tzedakah. You can force yourself to do all the mitzvahs. There's one mitzvah that you can't force yourself. Simcha you can't force. You're going to tell me you're going to stand on the table and dance on the table. Yeah, that can be simcha, that can be wild, as you see it. Simcha is a state in the nefesh. It's a condition in the nefesh, in the soul, that the soul has to be besimcha. That's something you can't copy and you can't force. You can meditate on it, and you can think about it, as it says so many places in Tanya, and then that brings about the simcha. But the simcha that is going to be brought about after we think about it and so on, that is the simcha that will bring the geula ha'amitis v'yashlema. And that's evident. The Rebbe says this clearly from the Magen Avraham, that this v'tev leiv mishte tomid will bring about in Yirtzeh Hashem the rebuilding of Beis Elokeinu, of the Beis Hamikdash, and Ozi Moles Chekpino, that we will fill our mouths with schek, with laughter and with joy and with happiness coming our way. And Rabbi say, we are the last generation of Golus, and we are the first generation of Geula. And therefore, we only have a little bit left. The Rebbe calls it pachim ktanim, small vessels. And those vessels become smaller and smaller. But it seems that there are still a few small vessels out there. And they're up to us that we should find those areas and work with those areas and elevate those areas and sanctify those areas, so that even the pachim ktanim are taken care of, and we are preparing ourselves and chalkeinu bo'elam, and our part, however small, our part in the world, that everybody should do what he can do, what she can do, and more, and besimcha, so that together, collectively, we can reach the Ozi Molis Chek Pinu, the coming of Mashiach, and fill our mouths with joy and with happiness coming our way with the coming of Mashiach. ובעגולו דידנו ושמחו ובטוב לבוב ובטיב הנילה והניגלה ולמטה מעשרות טפוחים ובחסד וברחמים ותקף ומיד ממש.